gentlemen, welcome to the third day of the semifinals and the 19th day overall of the 5th Custom Mail-In Tournament. Here's the list again of all those who have participated or still will, including today's first group, which will contain Jumping Berto, Puff, Ed Ednetti, and Zizzer Prime. Jumping Berto was blending in with the track a little bit for a second, but there goes Ed Ednetti with about a couple lengths lead over everybody else, but that lead was shortened for a second as they all went around that turn. Jumping Berto trying to make something happen here, but Zizzer Prime catches up to them. Ed Ednetti does a bit of a grind trick on that landing, but here comes Zizzer Prime trying to pass them, but Ed Ednetti managed to stop them. That being said, they both finished, while Jumping Berto and Puff could not quite get there. The finish line was within their line of sight, but Jumping Berto ended up on their side and Puff was facing the wrong way. Seemed like at least a couple of them tried to do a grinding trick, but it only worked out for Ed Ednetti. So 2 finishers, 2 non-finishers so far. Hopefully Puff and Jumping Berto can get their gears going, as it were. Race number 2. Looks like Jumping Berto is getting that determination into their driving as they currently hold the lead, but then they slow down going up that ramp. But then they speed right back up, and it looks like they're fighting for the lead. They almost had it from Ed Ednetti, who gets there first and flips completely over. Ed Ednetti comes to a complete stop. Will that stop anyone else from finishing? No, Zizzer Prime managed to find their way around. But Puff got stuck in almost the same spot as before. Once again, facing the opposite direction. While Ed Ednetti not only is on their backs, but they're off the track. This is exactly what Jumping Berto needed to get their determination back. And that is exactly what happened. Zizzer Prime still managing to finish in a solid second. And now they have the lead in points with Ed Ednetti and Zizzer. Oh no, wait, Ed Ednetti and Jumping Berto, each with 5. For now, Ed Ednetti still has that lead, but as we've seen many times over, just because you have the lead doesn't mean you'll maintain it the whole way through. That jump has flipped everyone, well, not everyone over, but a lot of people over. Certainly feels like it, but even some of the best racers have had some unfortunate endings to a race, all because of the way they landed or when they go into that lane merger. But Ed Ednetti does manage to finish. Puff, however, is even further from the finish line than before. And they actually clogged up the track a little bit because nothing would be able to get past them without ramming right into them. In fact, they were going sideways for a good chunk of that slide after landing. But Zizzer Prime finishing consistently in second may be what they will be able to use in order to move on, because they are in second in points, only 1 point behind Ed Ednetti, who's finished in first twice. Now here we go into race number 3. They're actually staying pretty close together for the time being. But Ed Ednetti further away now, the first one to the jump. Can they stay on their feet? They will, at least for the time being. The lanes merge and they stay in front. Jumping Berto pushing them forward, trying to shake them up, could not do it. But they finish in second, and now Zizzer finishing in third. I'm not sure if they'll still move on or we're going to have a tiebreaker in a second, but we will see in just a moment. Jumping Berto almost had the win, but could not quite get around Ed Ednetti. Puff was able to finish this time. And Zizzer still manages to finish in second, thanks to their consistent finishing in second place for the first 3 races. And now for Amy D, Lone Star, Numbskull, and Wild Willie G, the second group of today. Numbskull, a very familiar name, currently has that lead. but it looks like they have some competition now. But as the lanes merge back together, it is still Numbskull who is in the lead for the time being. But their back end gets stuck on the rail, and they actually bumped into one of the pillars, causing Wild Willie G to run right into them. And despite that whole fiasco, Numbskull somehow managed to still finish in second place, while Wild Willie G somehow wound up being the person who didn't finish. You'd think with the way that went down, Numbskull would be the one who did not finish, but they managed to somehow keep in front of two other racers. And Wild Willie G had an unfortunate ending. They might have gotten shaken up after their collision with Numbskull. In fact, that collision may have been what saved him. But for now, Amy D has the lead in points thanks to that little unfortunate accident. And I'm just realizing we're only seeing 3 racers. What happened to Wild Willie G? Did they get stuck at the starting line? But for now, Numbskull is still having some unfortunate occurrences as they flip upside down. There comes Wild Willie G. And they end up finishing in second after all that. I'm not sure what caused Wild Willie G to get there so late, but that may have actually been a good thing in the end, because by that point, Numbskull was already on their back and stopped. In fact, we had 2 people off the track, or at least out of the race. And you can see it took a while for Wild Willie G to get there. In fact, you can just see them now approaching. But that may have been the smart move to make, because then they saw all the obstacles in front of them and were able to find their way around them and get second place. They did nudge Numbskull briefly, but it didn't affect their performance. Lone Star was there with Numbskull, and Wild Willie G was able to get around both of them. Now for race number 3. Lone Star is actually falling a little bit behind right here, but maybe they can pick up some momentum around this first turn. So far, not a whole lot, but Wild Willie G is keeping up with Numbskull this time, alongside Amy D. Makes you really wonder what happened with them in that last race. But Numbskull is back out in front and gets the win, followed by Amy D, and Lone Star actually stopped Wild Willie G from finishing in third, as they passed them just as they got to the finish line. While Wild Willie G and Amy D actually almost had a synchronized landing there. Yeah, this vehicle for Wild Willie G seems to be all over the place right now. And this is definitely not somewhere you want to be at a time like this. They still technically have a shot, but they need to finish in front of Numbskull, and then Numbskull cannot finish at all, I don't think. And Wild Willie G would need to finish in first. But for now, Numbskull does have that lead. Wild Willie G is trying to keep up with at least Amy D, and Numbskull, Wild Willie G might have just gotten the break they needed. But I don't think it's going to be enough that they finished in second. I think they needed to finish in first. But Wild Willie G had a glimmer of hope as they saw what happened to Numbskull, got their spark of motivation back for just a moment, but they were stopped by Amy D. A very close call, but I don't think it's going to be enough. We'll have to see. No, they were 1 point short, finishing behind Numbskull, who will join Amy D in today's finals, which will start now. They join Zizzer Prime and Ed, and Eddie. The top 2 of these 4 will move on. And with how things have been going for Numbskull, it doesn't seem like they're really out of the woods now. For this first race, Ed, and Eddie holds on to the lead, but here comes Numbskull trying to take it from them, followed closely by Zizzer and Amy D. Ed and Eddie, the first one through the jump. Numbskull trying to maintain speed so they can catch up. but were unable to do so, and Ed and Eddie grabs the first victory of today's finals. The numbskull does finish in second, so that definitely helps them. Amy D, however, who was pretty solid in the group that just ran, ended up not finishing at all. Somehow they ended up going in reverse and then spinning out as they got into the last stretch. So it's really hard to tell what's going to happen anymore with how some of these races have been doing. Maybe the exhaustion is finally getting to some of them after so many days of the tournament. But the race begins and they are starting to divvy up a little bit. Ed and Eddie is back out in front, but Numbskull almost was able to take the lead from them. But then Numbskull skids sideways and slows down quite a bit. Will they finish at all? No, they will not. And he ended up stopping Zizzer from finishing either. A lot of Numbskull fans, I'm sure, are on the edge of their seats, just wondering what's going to happen with Numbskull. Will they be able to move on to the finals or no? They at least stopped Zizzer from finishing. I don't know how much that will help. But because Amy D did not finish in that first race, that will help them a little bit. Meanwhile, Ed and Eddie are one victory away from guaranteeing a spot in the next phase of this tournament. They just need to stay out in front, have a clean landing, and stay off the walls to keep from flipping over. So far, so good. Numbskull, however, is upside down and coming to a complete stop alongside Zizzer. And I think Ed and Eddie is the only person to finish. Amy D ended up sideways on the final stretch of the track. Numbskull finishing, well, not finishing necessarily, but they stopped upside down with Zizzer Prime right behind them. This round of the tournament is definitely a shocker for most. We're not sure what's going to happen now, but that definitely is going to be a sigh of relief for Numbskull. This final race is likely to decide it all. If nobody finishes in this one, then I believe it is Amy D who will still end up moving on instead of Numbskull. Or no, Ed and Eddie is guaranteed to move on. And then Amy D, I believe, has more points. Ed and Eddie ends up being the one upside down this time around. And they almost stopped Numbskull from finishing. In fact, they are the only one who didn't finish. That's about as close as you can get without doing so. But because they had 3 wins already, they are moving on. It's just a matter of who will join them, and I believe it is Amy D, knocking out both Numbskull and Zizzer Prime. This is definitely an unusual set of events, but that is what happened. Amy D is moving on alongside Ed and Eddie, adding to the roster of the Grand Finals. Thank you all so much for watching. See you next time.